Welcome to this new automotive news video for Wednesday, June 17, 2026. Renault, which against all odds is working on a new sporty version of the Clio, and Volkswagen, whose executives are all sounding the alarm and consider the group to be under serious threat. Land Rover, which is abandoning all-electric for one of its future models, and French companies that are suddenly slowing down their purchases of electric cars. I hope the topics I've chosen for you will interest you. If that's the case, as usual, I count on you to show it by leaving a like, subscribing for my upcoming videos, boosting this one if the option appears for you, and of course by leaving a comment where you share your opinion on today's news. Before discussing the topics in this video's summary, I'm sharing a news item that should please gas-powered sports car fans. Steve Nichols, a former engineer who developed some of McLaren's race cars, has just unveiled his very first road car. This is a two-seater roadster with a carbon chassis, which allows it to have a weight of only 900 kilograms. And all this despite the presence under its hood of a very large V8 engine with more than 6 liters of displacement, producing about 710 horsepower. A car that will probably be particularly wild to drive since its rear-wheel drive has a 6-speed manual gearbox and no driving assistance, at least as standard, since as an option it is actually possible to request at least ABS. It's called the Nichols N1A. It's a little ray of sunshine in this particularly gray automotive world. Unfortunately, and you probably suspected it, we're talking about a car that will be very rare, since it's limited to only 150 units and, above all, very expensive. We're talking about an entry-level price set at around 500,000 euros. For years, we've been told that small gas-powered sports cars were doomed, especially the little compact GTIs. Renault was even one of the brands that buried these gas-powered sports cars the fastest, simply ending the Renault Sport division in 2019. But still, Renault enthusiasts dream of seeing a new sporty Clio or a sporty Megane arrive on the market. We all thought the story was over, but now Renault appears to be sending a very different message. Indeed, and against all expectations, after killing off its Renault Sport division, and after explaining that it did so to give exclusivity to its Alpine brand. For sports cars, Renault is apparently developing a sporty version of the Clio 6 with more than 200 horsepower. Now, be careful, we're not talking about the return of the Renault Sport badge here. We're talking more about a sportier Renault, more in the spirit of what they used to do under the GT name. This future sporty Clio wouldn't rely on a traditional 100% combustion engine, nor on a fully electric powertrain. Instead, it would be based on its latest generation full hybrid engine. Currently at Renault, even on the Clio, you can find a full hybrid with a 1.6-liter 4-cylinder engine that produces around 160 horsepower. Here, the idea would be for Renault to use this powertrain, boost it a little to reach around 200 horsepower thanks to a bigger battery and a more powerful electric motor than the one found in the traditional full hybrid. So, over 200 horsepower in this new sporty version of the Clio. But there will still be a major challenge to overcome: the weight. Because while 200 horsepower sounds powerful on paper, modern sports cars now have to deal with the constraints of electrification. Between the batteries, advanced technological systems, and everything that comes with them, a Clio 6 still weighs 300 kilos more than the first generations of Clio. So there will be a lot of work to do on the chassis to make sure this Clio really has sporty handling. And in fact, there are also supposed to be modifications to the chassis that Renault is working on, including the addition of a new stabilizer bar, more powerful brakes, and a stiffer suspension. It remains to be seen when this new Clio will be officially unveiled. It's quite possible that it will be revealed during the 2026 Paris Motor Show, and that it will go on sale around 2027. If they see the project through, Renault is almost certain it will be a commercial success because most of its competitors, the GTIs, have become electric. Much less versatile, unfortunately, in many cases less performant than the previous generation of gas-powered GTI sports cars, mainly because of the extra weight of the batteries, Renault could end up with an almost complete monopoly on the gas-powered GTI market. On the other hand, we shouldn't forget that Peugeot, Audi, and even Volkswagen have all switched to electric for their entry-level small sports cars. By the way, speaking of Volkswagen, you should know that at Volkswagen, all the warning lights are flashing red. Indeed, at Volkswagen, the concern is no longer limited to analysts or investors. This time, it's the executives themselves who are sounding the alarm. According to information revealed by the German magazine Manager magazine, Olivier Blum, the head of the Volkswagen Group, asked his main executives a few months ago to anonymously share their honest opinions about the real state of the company. 8 members of the management board, 14 members of the supervisory board, as well as the head of Porsche, the new head of Porsche who replaced Olivier Blum, Michael Litters, the former head of McLaren, all took part in this internal consultation. The results of this consultation are particularly worrying, since among the 9 main executives consulted, 6, that is, 2/3, believe that the very existence of the Volkswagen Group is currently under threat. The other three are a little less concerned, negative, but still believe that the situation is particularly tense. None of the members consulted considered the current situation to be normal or reassuring. In other words, even at the top of the leading European manufacturer, let's not forget that Volkswagen is the leader, well, at this top level, no one seems truly confident about the future of the group. And that's not all, because the investigation also reveals that the Volkswagen board of directors is particularly divided, since Volkswagen has to deal with several major crises at the same time. The problem in China, where Volkswagen is no longer able to sell cars. Volkswagen can sell cars in the United States, but had to cut its margins significantly to deal with American taxes. As a result, the group's profitability is declining, sales are falling, growth prospects have been revised downward, and the savings already implemented may not be enough. All the warning lights are on, even Cargalade, the software subsidiary meant to prepare the group's digital future, faces delays and cost overruns. Volkswagen is now forced to partner with Chinese and American manufacturers, such as Rivian or Chipping, and is preparing to unveil a new austerity plan on July 9, 2026, aimed at streamlining its organization, accelerating its restructuring, and revising its electric strategy. Basically, what this means is that what's likely to happen is more layoffs in Europe and more partnerships with Chinese brands. In any case, thanks to this consultation, one thing is now absolutely clear for Volkswagen's leaders. The group is no longer just going through a rough patch, but is actually playing for its future during one of the most important periods in its recent automotive history. By the way, regarding electric strategy, you should know Land Rover has taken another step back. The British brand is preparing a new model that will join the Defender family, a more compact vehicle often nicknamed the Baby Defender. At first, Land Rover had planned for it to be exclusively 100% electric, but the brand has just changed its plans, confirming that thanks to the new EMA platform on which it will be built, it will also be offered to the brand's customers in plug-in hybrid versions equipped with combustion engines. So it would be for commercial reasons, but also for technical reasons, because we're talking here about a vehicle that Land Rover absolutely wants to present as an off-roader, as a true all-terrain vehicle. And it's true that it's quite difficult to find a charging station in a hostile environment, in the middle of the forest, but it's also because the design of the Defender features extremely angular, extremely boxy shapes that the Baby Defender should also adopt. And the problem is that it's very difficult to make a vehicle that's both completely boxy and highly optimized for aerodynamics, which means it's going to be very hard to achieve long ranges with the fully electric versions, unless you put in very large batteries. Except that very large, very heavy batteries usually make the vehicles heavier, and heavier vehicles generally perform worse off-road, especially in the mud. So, to preserve the product, and to avoid introducing yet another electric SUV in a world where that's almost all there is, Jaguar Land Rover thinks it will be a better vehicle with a combustion engine and a small battery as part of a plug-in hybrid setup. Behind these strategy changes, there's also a deeper problem. The demand for electric cars is no longer necessarily following the forecasts. This concerns both the French and broader European automotive markets. Large European and French companies have suddenly slowed down their purchases and ambitions to buy electric cars. That's what the latest 2026 barometer from the European Fleet Emission Monitor, published by Alphabet International, reveals. While corporate fleets were supposed to play a major role in accelerating the energy transition, more and more decision makers now prefer to wait rather than invest. The main reason given is regulatory uncertainty. Indeed, since the rules regarding automobiles change almost every other day, even as an ordinary individual buyer, you might be tempted to postpone your purchase until the conditions are as favorable as possible. Managing thousands or even hundreds of thousands of cars means large companies may spend tens or hundreds of millions of euros on car purchases. That's what's at stake. But indeed, with changes in environmental regulations, shifting timelines, and political uncertainty seen in several European countries, many companies no longer know what to do. As a result, only 27% of European companies plan to maintain their investment strategy in electric cars. On the other hand, about a third of fleet managers have decided to freeze their investments. So for them, that simply means no new cars to buy. 20 are holding off on investments until the regulatory framework is clarified. But this pause is likely temporary, and 15 of them now favor hybrids as an intermediate solution. In other words, while electric vehicles were supposed to take over quickly, part of the market now prefers to wait. In any case, the message sent by the business EV market is clear. Companies are not necessarily questioning the all-electric approach, but they are asking for more clarity. And as long as this clarity doesn't exist, the energy transition is likely to continue progressing much more slowly than expected. and it will keep impacting the consumer market as well. That's why Europe puts so much emphasis on company fleets for the transition to electric vehicles, because generally these are cars that end up on the used market much earlier than others, which would theoretically allow individuals to switch to electric much faster, thanks to cheaper models available on the used market. But for that to happen, there first needs to be supply on the used market, and if companies don't play along, well, it simply will never happen. We'll see if the situation becomes clearer. In any case, we've covered today's news. I hope you found the video interesting. If that's the case, I count on you to show it by leaving a like, subscribing for future videos, and of course, by becoming a supporter. That's the join button below this one. See you tomorrow for the next one. Bye.